Morning, Chris.
Cliff, how you doing?
Oh, I'm so excited to be here 2 hours early.
Are you down at the courthouse? Are you at City Hall?
Yeah, I don't have stable internet at my house, and so I come down here for the meeting.
Oh, there you go.
Sit on down.
All right.
Let's get you comfortable on the camera there.
There you go.
Yeah, that angle's pretty good. I'm just going to leave it in gallery view so you'll be able to see everyone at the same time.
Okay.
And I'm going to take off everyone who's not a council member.
Okay.
So, I'm just going to leave you in here.
All right. Thanks.
And those are the questions we're going to use.
Yeah, I got that. Thanks. It's a tough number too, but
You ever have one of those days where nothing goes as planned?
Welcome to my life.
Oh my gosh.
Kevin, I have 3 children under the age of 4.
I had 2 things on my to-do list. One of them took an hour and a half and I never got to the other one.
You don't work an 8-hour day?
No, I work whenever things happen.
I'm just kidding.
I know. I'm supposed to work 8 hours, but
Maybe not 8 hours total, but 365, 24/7, right?
well, yeah, I need to.
Yeah.
Hey, John.
I was really lucky. Last weekend when they had that storm. Usually when we have the storms and we have power outages, and if the power outages go, then our switches go down, up and down the valley.
Right.
And we had one issue, and that was it after that
Wow.
storm. So
That's not bad. That's not bad at all.
Can anybody hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, Don, you're great.
just so everyone is aware, the meeting is now being recorded and is active on Facebook Live.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Hey, Jim, how do I pronounce your last name? Probably for the 5th time.
I don't think Jim can hear you.
Oh, okay.
Cliff, you guys raise if you can hear me. Chris? Jim?
It's Mesply.
You hearing the mayor at all?
Mesply.
I hear everybody waving, but
Mesply.
Let's turn this up. Go ahead. Try again.
Can everybody hear me?
There you go.
Jim? Okay.
If that blue light goes off,
okay,
that means it's not making noise.
okay.
That's good.
Any indication of Jackie Matson? Is she
Thanks.
somewhere?
All right.
Hey, Andrew?
I didn't hear. Is Jackie going to make it?
As far as I know, I've not heard different.
Chris, you're hiding in the dark again.
It's just like being at work, buddy. It's just like being at work. Hide in the dark.
Are we trying to get a hold of Jackie? Mhm.
I heard a phone ringing somewhere.
Yeah, I did too. Oh, Jackie is having technical difficulties in Zoom.
Sherry, could I recommend that we at least give her 5 to 10 minutes? Because we certainly want her to hear all the presentations.
Yep.
Sorry, folks.
Hey, Andrew, are you on there?
Yeah, go ahead.
Will you text Jackie the link again?
You want me to text it to her or email it to her?
No, she's saying text it to her. I'll clarify.
Sure. I can sign into my account
Okay,
on my phone.
okay. Do you have a number to text her to?
Yeah.
Okay, she wants you to text it.
Hey, Roger.
Yes.
Roger, while we're waiting, I just wanted to let you know we're following up on that House bill that discusses tax credits for affordable housing. We're following up on that.
I saw the email
Jackie.
from you and Jeff. Thank you.
Bet.
Looks like we're all here, Mayor.
Okay, we are now ready to begin our study session with our candidate interviews for council. Our first candidate is,
Mayor, if we'll have Jeff Peters confirm the candidates' addresses.
okay, Jeff Peters, are you there?
Yes, I'm here now.
Okay, Jeff Peters is going to confirm that our candidates are eligible to run.
All right. Yeah, so as the city planner for the city of Selah, I have gone and reviewed all of the applications and found that all council candidates are located, their residences are located within the city of Selah city limits. Therefore, they are all eligible to be considered for council selection.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Our first candidate is Jim Betsby.
Yes.
Jim, are you there?
Yes, I am, Madam Mayor.
There you are. Okay, Jim, please take up to 5 minutes to introduce yourself to the council and the public.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. My name is Jim Espley. As I said, about 6 months ago when we last met each other, I stood in front of the council and talked about why, after so many years of being away, that my wife and I decided to move our family back to Selah. And what I've seen in the last 6 months in this community during the tragedies we had earlier in the year and ongoing pandemic and the response by the community, that further has solidified why I'm sitting here today. Is because this community is strong, it's willing, it's unwavering. And what I've seen from the citizens, from my personal experience, my family, the response that we're showing outgoing for all the kids and families out there who are missing out on school, all the way down to families and friends, and the fact that we're being missed and we're finding ways, just like we are today, figuring out a way to stay connected and still keep our community moving forward and finding a way to get through this together. The response that I'm seeing for the graduating seniors in 2020, those are going to be something they're going to remember for the rest of their lives, and they can look back at it now and reflect that it was a bad time, but at the same time, as a community, I think we're going to be stronger and more closer and built together than we are today, than we were 6 months ago. So, I had I'm still married through this pandemic. I still have 2 kids, happy, good kids. That I would say that regardless of what's been going on, my family has been, just like many other families in the Selah community, have stuck together. We're going to get through this, and we're going to think about it 2 years, 3 years from now, and think about what strange times we're living in, but at the same time, how we as a community are going to grow stronger. And I still firmly believe that. And me, 2 years ago, moving back here has been, it's further in concrete now. I don't anticipate even any other place I'd rather be than Selah. And this is my opportunity, like I said last time, is to give back to the community that gave me so much growing up here years ago. And this place I'll call home for the next 50 years. And with that, I have nothing else to add because, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. What do you think the city should be doing in relation to the COVID-19 response?
That's a tough question. One thing is on a personal belief, I know that there's experts out there that work for the Yakima Health Department and also for the state. And I believe that using those resources, and obviously they put out statements saying we highly encourage for you to do social distancing, wear a mask, all these things that we can do as a whole. But I think as a city itself, we can take those advice and say we can highly encourage, but I think it should still be up to the businesses and to be able to find a way to have their doors open within what is safe for the customers, what's safe for the workers and everybody else. And so we can somehow get along and move on to the next phase and get our numbers down. That's where I think, the city has responded in the way it's responded. And I'm highly supportive of how what's been come out, what's transpired in the businesses and what they've done. I think we need to continue and just monitor the numbers and monitor the Yakima Health Department and look at those numbers and make our own decision on what we need to do. And I think that's really up to the business owners and how they want to proceed and what they feel is safe for themselves and their customers and their workers.
All right, thank you. What do you believe are a council member's primary responsibilities, and how do you think a council member should react and interact with the city staff?
Well, the primary responsibility, the way that I view it, is that the city council is responsible for managing the money that that has been budgeted for by the state to spend appropriately for infrastructure, to rebuild, anything that needs to be rebuilt that's older, that's wearing down, something that we can improve the city, whether it be, roadways, widening of sidewalks, rebuilding, pump stations, anything that's involved with the city. That's where I feel that's kind of the line where the city council, and also they, pass ordinances and resolutions in order to move forward so the city can function based off the feedback from the city administrator and everybody else.
All right, thank you. On your application, you listed several of the priorities you desire for the city of Selah. Please choose one and explain what measures you would suggest we take to implement those changes.
The last time we had met, the one thing that I pointed out was, developing the community. I know it's easy to say, but it's really hard to do. I know that it's been asked of the mayor and the council, and the feedback on, we're trying to get businesses to show up in Selah. What do we need to do to get people, businesses to open up storefronts? And the feedback, if I remember from that council meeting from last year, was like, was basically, we don't know why they don't want to be here. They just don't want to be here. We got to figure out a way to get storefronts here. I know that there's businesses that are open up. I mentioned we want to get events here. We get some festivals. We have community days, which is a great thing, but obviously we're not having that this year. That's where I feel is the biggest thing to do to expand the base for commercial, businesses and tax dollars, and get those businesses an ongoing, that could further develop more ongoing businesses to come into Selah.
Okay, thank you. Jim, what is your philosophy regarding the fiscal management as far as the city council member is concerned?
I'm a stark fiscal conservative. I'm really big on not wasting what are everybody here, their tax dollars, my tax dollars, and anybody else. Like there's a financial responsibility that comes with the council and any government official. And that is something that I firmly believe. I work as an accountant, I'm a controller. I do sometimes treat the company's money like it's money, so my money, so I want to spend it appropriately and not be wasteful. You have to be very efficient, and also, the kudos to the city of Selah is the city has been run very fiscally conservative to have what I would say a piggy bank for times like this, that we're not overspending. We're not spending every dollar that comes in. We're putting aside money for something like this to happen. And I firmly believe that that's what needs to happen. There's no reason to spend every single dollar, but we need to treat it like a business would. If they have a huge capital expenditure, we want to make sure that we're getting the best bidder and we're not having a long-term costs that kind of trail out. And also, we don't want to get proposed like it's going to cost $200,000, and then a contractor says it's $250,000, and then we're kind of surprised. There's got to be a lot of due diligence, and that's what the city, council members do, and that's what their expertise are there for. But also be able to have a stronghold to say no. We agreed on $200,000. $200,000 is what we're going to stick to, but can we find something that doesn't break the bank, and find a ways to invest our money to develop the city further into the future?
Okay. So Jim, I have one more question for you.
Yes.
How would you handle differently the city's actions with the COVID-19 pandemic?
How would I deal with different?
Differently than what we have done?
I personally think, just back to what I said before, from what I'm getting in the business, what I've, frequenting the businesses locally, is that there's at some point, there's got to be a line that has to be drawn between business owners and what I deem as free will, and be also to make a decision on your own and be able to say, I'm going to put, this is the sacrifice I'm willing to make. And I personally don't think, as far as the way it's been going, I don't see a way that needs to be changed. I personally feel the way it's been done. I think what came up in a meeting or two ago in regards to trying to figure out how businesses, to spread out the social distancing, be able to share a parking lot, be able to how they can set up their business. I think that's something that it's an ongoing conversation. I think that if those are solutions to get businesses to start opening up again, I think we need to go down that road and kind of beat our own path when it comes to opening up these businesses back up, so we can get people back to work, get the registers going, get the tax dollars coming back in, and get people to ease their burden that they're feeling right now.
All right, thank you. So council members, I will call on you one by one, and you can ask Jim one question. Let's start with Russ.
Hey, Jim, appreciate you being with us. My question for you is in terms of your application when you put it in. You talked about maintaining quality of public safety.
Sorry, Councilman, you're gonna have to repeat that. The power button just went on the speaker, and as soon as you start asking the question, I don't know what happened.
Yeah, sure, no problem. So you talked about in your application, you talked about one of your priorities as being as maintaining quality of public safety.
Yes.
So what needs do you see that we aren't doing currently that we could potentially change and in order to maintain that quality of public safety?
Well, it's not saying that we're not doing something wrong now. I think it's being proactive versus being reactive. And I know that as the city's growing, we're throwing up, a lot more residentials are being built, apartments are being built. So the population naturally is going to expand. And with our closeness to Yakima, sometimes it's having our officers and our firefighters having the resources available. So if something does come over from the other side of the freeway, that they're well equipped and making sure that they have what they need, especially as crimes become involving, whether it be, fraud, identity fraud, which I've been a victim now twice, thanks to this unemployment scam that recently came through. But there's a lot of other things as criminals change their ways, having the police officers, having the resources as far as vehicles, a head count as far as officers on the ground. And we also have making sure that they have the resources available to respond to the citizens in the way that they want to. I know that sometimes there can be constraints. In bigger places, Selah is not one of them. We have a really great police force. I don't say there's anything wrong with what we're doing now, but it's always be ready for the future and making sure that you are ready, and having the officers prepared so they're not in a position where they're held in a place where they're defenseless and they're outnumbered, or something bad might happen. It's always anticipating what possibly could go wrong, because those guys, the officers, men and women, have families as well, that we want to make sure that they're not, lack of resources is not the reason why that costs them more than that.
Okay, thank you. Chris Lance.
Thank you, Mayor. Jim, it's good to see you back. We had a chance to visit a time before, about 6 months ago.
Yes.
So in what you've got here, I was reading your motivation for being on the city council.
Yes.
We both spent time away from Selah, both in the Tacoma area.
Yeah.
And coming back to Selah, and I'm kind of reflecting this towards myself and moving back as well. What do you see being in Selah when you were younger, being away, seeing other areas, and coming back? What do you see as maybe the biggest challenge after being back for a while with Selah and its growth? What do you feel is the biggest challenge Selah has as far as the future and growth and room to grow or expand?
That's a good question. On an emotional standpoint, obviously you can relate to anybody else who's, you come back to Selah, there's a familiarity, there's memories, you go drive by this, you remember that. But when you look at the big picture, especially as an adult, it's crazy to be an adult, but it's more of what I see. There's a lot of corner spaces. There's a lot of businesses that, there's a lot of space available for that. I personally felt that, being years away, that you would assume, like, businesses rotate. You'd think that there'd be something new. Whatever it is that Wells Fargo Bank on the corner right there, just around the way. You think that I think look at that as there's so much that could be, that's a great spot. It's around the corner. It's highly visible. and that goes back to my answer about developing the communities, like being able to get these storefronts and get these businesses filled, because I like Selah the way it is as far as the culture and the way that we are the small, it's a small city mentality, but we're taking care of each other. I love that. That's why I'm here. But at the same time, the world around us is expanding and other people are getting more experiences as, you know, we moved away. And so I look at that from the standpoint of, it answers back to the question that Madam Mayor and what they asked last year, like, why don't people come here, or businesses, storefronts? It's finding a way to get them here. And that's why I still feel that there's a huge opportunity for Selah to grow on that store, and without expanding the residential population and getting the culture and the beliefs and the values that Selah holds true today to change in a way that it's, you know, it takes that away. That's a really tough question. That's really, you know, broad spectrum I could talk about, you know, for a long time. But that's the biggest thing, is getting these more businesses that also would get a lot of more foot traffic and car vehicles, workers, and be able to get more businesses to frequent, you know, our fruit joints, our stores. We got a lot of places that you get some diverse businesses that I think that's really what's standing in our way is the lack of diverse businesses in Selah. But that's something that a problem that needs to be solved, and I think Selah will grow in great strides if that happens.
Thank you. Clef Peterson.
One of the things that sort of ties in with your last answer about getting more people here, one of the things that you say in your application is to influence the community to be more involved in the city and its government. How do you see your role on the council and the council as a whole being able to encourage that involvement?
Well, I think, you know, I think about what's currently going on with the younger, you know, I think a first example is the first sustainers of the 2020. And I think about maybe the inspiration of this moments and they're dealing with right now would inspire them to, you know, become heavily more involved, and not just on the every 4 years at, you know, voter turnout elections. I think for me personally, being very passionate about, you know, this city and where it stands and where it's going, I can only use my voice in this forum, be able to get people out and support, you know, local candidates and be able to support local initiatives. Anything that's passed on from the city of Selah, however through social media or any other means, I'm trying to get the word out myself and be able to get other people involved and have meaningful discussions with people, whether they agree or disagree. It's getting them involved and have these discussions and be involved, and not, you know, not say anything. And then when something happens, they start complaining. You know, you have those people that just start complaining about, well, you didn't raise a voice then, but now you're saying something now. It's getting back to the point where, you know, get people involved. It takes a lot of work, but my passion and my concern and my ownership in the city from here on out, as far as the residents is concerned, and a citizen and taxpayer and a voter, it's my duty to make sure that I do the best I can to get the word out and get the information that and get people pointed in the right direction where the correct information is. And, you know, it comes from the city of Selah, it comes from the Yakima County, it comes from the state, doing everything we can to get people inspired and motivated to come out and be concerned about local issues, and maybe not so concerned about the national issues.
Thank you, Jim. Let's see. Kevin Wickenhagen, are you ready? Kevin, you need to unmute yourself.
There we go. All right. Sorry. So you've talked about attracting stuff. So if you had a magic lamp loved it, and you wanted to know, you can make Selah look like anything you want it to look like, what would it look like in 15 years?
In 15 years?
Yep.
Well, if we only had that magic wand, if everything was so simple. What I mentioned, 5, 6 months ago, the first time that I applied for the city council position, I mentioned that, being open to any industry that'd be able to expand the commercial and the out in East Selah that I mentioned. I forget the name of the company, but having what I would say, we have Treetop is a great, local business that we manufacture creates a lot of jobs. If we can get, something of not maybe like Treetop, but something of that nature in a different industry, that would be number one, is be able to get doesn't have to be traditional manufacturing, but a manufacturing just like Treetop that doesn't conflict with Treetop. Maybe it could be making precast parts or precast, plant. I work for Old Castle Precast. That's why I mentioned it. But also look at to get more storefronts. That's what I like to see, is be able to have more variety that forces people not to go to outside the city limits in order to get their groceries or get this or get that. There's a lot of different businesses that I personally want to make sure that I support locally as much as I can, but sometimes I'm required to go outside that. And I want to be able to get a very diverse business set and a tax base for the city of Selah. If I had a wand and be able to do that, that's what I would really want. And also get another manufacturer that created maybe 100, 200 more jobs in the city of Selah, but also be able to have, I would say that I would hope that with all those people coming in, they don't have to really, they work in Selah, but it gets more people to start coming. So when we have events like the cars that drive up and down on Saturday nights that my kids love and I love, be able to get more events like that gets more people to come to Selah and visit, and they can get, they have a lot of places they can stop. They're just not here for one thing or another. There's a lot of options they can do. The magic wand would also there would be, some vineyards or wineries that get a lot of people who travel down the lower Yakima Valley to go to all these wineries. Well, it'd be great if Selah could have something like that. It gets people to come through, a lot more people to visit, and once again, get those sales tax dollars up, and then we can start expanding from there. But that's my magic wand, and it'd be great.
Thanks, Jim. Roger Bell.
Yes, Jim, besides your financial experience and background, what would you consider to be the strongest attribute you have to bring to the city council?
I would say, I have my years of experience as a controller and accountant, but I would say the biggest thing is that being very pragmatic and be a good decision maker. Don't let emotions dictate, a decision. There's always emotions when you make decisions, but there's never a knee-jerk reaction out of me. There's always a well thought out decision that's being made, getting all the facts, and make sure you hear both sides and not just one side, but also see it from every different angle and make a sound decision and sticking with it, and having the fortitude and to be confident in the decision I've been made. And that's what you need is any leadership position. You need someone that has that with an integrity side to it. But I have a very analytical mind. I look at things in a different way. That's why I'm an accountant. I look at everything as a fiscal decision, especially in this position, the city council member. There's a lot of fiscal decisions to be made. And sometimes emotions can't really cloud that judgment. You got to look at it from a standpoint on a long-term basis. And for me, that's where I feel there's a lot of my strengths. Besides my industry knowledge, it's my analytical mind that really, and be able to make sound decisions that have been well thought out.
All right, thanks, Jim. Jackie Manson.
Hi, Jim. First of all, I want to offer my apology for having some technical difficulties in joining the meeting today. I know that delayed the beginning of your interview for a few minutes. So
Yeah, just maybe sit in the hot seat for a little bit longer. That's fine.
sorry about that. I actually had a couple different questions, and you've answered most of my questions. The one that I was going to ask you mainly was in your attachment, you did state that you would like to influence the community to be much more involved in the city and its government. Do you think we could make any changes to make that our meetings or anything like that more accessible to our citizens?
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, it feels like since city council meetings have been through Zoom and Facebook, you know, I've watched them personally on time delay or as they're going on. It seems like there is a larger turnout when it comes to getting city council, people listening in and paying attention. I would say that social media, being able to have websites up to date with correct information, be able to push that information out there. I don't know where the city stands when it comes to stuff like that. I don't know the specifics on that, but I think it's getting the word out and finding the avenues the way that gets people's attention. Traditionally growing up, it was a newspaper, then eventually became online. Now it's, you know, everybody has Instagram. They have all these different, whatever the social media is, we've got to find a way to connect with all our citizens in one way, shape, or form. And the younger generation might be here, but people like me could, you know, it could depend on the generation of how they access their news and their information. But continue to press on and be persistent. And all you can do is make them aware. It's up to a citizen's decision whether they want to be involved or not. But it's, to me, you know, like I said before, it's up to me and everybody else to inform people, and this is important. This does affect you directly. And these are your tax dollars at work. You want to make sure that things are happening. This is your opportunity. The city council provides an opportunity for citizens to come forward and express their concerns. And if they don't, then there it is. But I think there's for the city of Selah, we got to find a way to continue to be able to, like, I don't know how this affects, like, with the telecast that normally happens with city council meetings, but maybe having Zoom a part of it, or having something that a live feed maybe doesn't interfere with their viewership, but somehow, some way, getting the viewers to see it from the comforts of their own home, or have it playback they can watch later on tonight, which I've done. But also get any updates when it comes to all these public notices, get them in the places that citizens can access them. And maybe you need some input from some people and some local citizens. Maybe get a different demographic, 18-year-olds, 24-year-olds, 30 years old. How do they see information? How do they know, you know, find a way to find out where they're at, and then we can communicate with them that way.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Jim. We are going to move on to our next candidate.
Thank you guys for your time. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thanks. Just give us a few minutes here while we move Nick Becker in.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I am just letting you know I'm having a little bit of challenge with my internet here at work. I am in my office, so just to let you know, if you don't see me or hear me, I'm just having a little spotty reception.
Okay, thanks, Jackie.
Thank you.
Make some quick adjustments here. Go ahead and sit down. Let's make sure you're comfortable. Oh, you're right here, but you're going to be pinned here in a second, so everybody's only going to see you.
Okay.
Okay. If this blue light ever goes off, then the power's been cut. Just play with that button.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you. I'll be on. Yeah.
Okay, welcome, Even though it says you're Jim Melsply, we know you're Nick Becker, right? Can you hear me?
Oh, sorry, you cut out in volume there. So
Okay. So even though it says Jim Melsply, this is Nick Becker. Welcome, Nick.
hello, thank you for having me.
Start off with a few questions. Please take up to 5 minutes to introduce yourself to the council and the public that we have on.
Okay, my name's Nick Becker. I've been pretty much born and raised in Selah, except for the 2 years I was away in college at Spokane. But recently had a Selah graduate just kind of go through that whole process this weekend, which was pretty cool. Talking to him, he had a really good time, so it was pretty awesome how the community came together for that. But other than that, I mean, I went to Central, graduated with a degree in human resource management as well as management organization. From there, I worked at Enterprise Rent-A-Car and then got a position at Farmers Insurance as a claims adjuster, handling property claims, injury claims. Then spent 15 years doing that. Then most recently had the opportunity to purchase a agency. So now I am a business owner, which is a whole nother beast in itself. So very learning experiences were involved in that one. So, but that is me in a nutshell. So.
Okay. Nick, what do you think the city should be doing in relation to their COVID-19 responses?
I think the city took in my opinion, the correct steps as far as issuing the proclamation that, hey, allowing the citizens to kind of make decisions for themselves and knowing that there could be consequences, not from the city, but from outside sources. But with the city getting behind them a little bit, saying, hey, proceed as you see fit to kind of make your living, kind of put food on the table for your family. I thought the city did a good job in that regard.
Okay, thank you. Nick, what do you believe are council members' primary responsibilities, and how do you think a council member should interact with city staff?
The primary responsibility of city council, I think, is to be there for the masses, make the best decision with the information that they have on hand, no matter if it's related to zoning for houses or construction of roads, stuff of that nature. Interaction should always be there, the type of respect and kind of how they want to be treated. So it's one that should be professional at all time, knowing that you're kind of under a microscope a little bit. So so always be a professional, whether it's part of the city or you're out and about.
Sometimes that's a big microscope.
Yes, it is.
Nick, on your application, you listed several of the priorities you desire for the city of Selah. Please choose one and explain what measures you would suggest we take to implement those changes.
One of the measures I like to see is kind of just get more foot traffic into the city, to where more foot traffic comes, the more money's being spent in the city, the more tax dollars we can collect. One thing that I know Yakima does quite a bit is kind of like the block parties, kind of like the wine and food events that draw a lot of people in. So doing something like that, like blocking off a block or two to do something of that nature, I think would be pretty cool, and have like live music, stuff like that. So, because I know we kind of have the cruise nights, kind of the unofficial cruise nights, and those are pretty popular. So something along that line to where it gets more people, once it's safe to do so, of course, to get more people involved and engaged.
Okay. Nick, what is your philosophy regarding fiscal management as far as the city council member is concerned?
It's making every dollar that's spent, make it count. So it's not just to spend money because we have money to spend. It's maybe saying, hey, we don't necessarily need this piece of equipment right now. We could probably save, collect a little bit more interest on that in the bank. But just making every dollar count. So, so that's how I see it, just making it count.
Okay. So we're going to start with council members, and they're going to ask you one question.
Okay.
Let's start with Jackie Maxson.
Hi, Nick.
Hello.
How are you doing today?
I'm good. How about you?
Real good. So one of your priorities, you stated that you wanted to help businesses retain and gain customers. How would you do that as a council member?
I think I mentioned a little bit before as far as doing those block parties, make sure that the business maybe has a booth out there so people can see them. They can get the advertisement that they need out there, and people buy stuff from their booth. So another thing would be possibly bringing in new businesses that aren't here to where it helps increase the neighboring business.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Roger Bell.
Yes, Nick. Besides your insurance background and experience, what would you consider to be your strongest attribute that you bring to the city council?
I'm very analytical, so I don't kind of make a decision going off the seat of my pants. I like to get as much information as I can before I make the decision. So I'm very even-keeled. Being in insurance stuff, you kind of get in uncomfortable situations to where somebody is mad, and you just kind of have to hear where they're coming from and understand the reasons why they're mad behind that. So it's just me being very even-tempered and not getting too emotional into what's going on.
Okay, thank you. Kevin Wickenhagen.
Sorry, keyboard's sticking. So if you could have any wish you wanted, what would you like the city of Selah to look like in 15 years?
It'd be one to where I would love to see more people engaged with how the city should look, as far as getting input from every age group from 18 to 85. But it'd be one where everyone feels like they're being heard and that all their emotions are acknowledged and kind of either acted on or just feel that they are heard. But yeah, as far as how the city would look 10 to 15 years from now, it'd be definitely more people, more businesses. And I think starting out with like the block parties, the community events would help build upon that.
Thank you.
Hey, Cliff Peterson.
Well, Kevin sort of answered part of my question, or repeated the same question. One of the priorities you have is figure out where we go and how to get there. Kevin's question sort of covered where you want us to go. How do you suppose we'll get there?
Oh, was that you cut out a little bit on the last part?
Sort of covered where you would like us to see us go, what the city will look like. How do you see us moving forward to that magic wand answer?
Well, I know it'd be something that doesn't happen overnight. It'd have to be starting with community events leading up to bigger events, like maybe having concerts and stuff like that. Bring in like acts, so that way people can come to Selah instead of having to go to like Legends Casino or the Sundome, something like that. So it's bringing the people into Selah, and giving them a reason to come into Selah. So it'd be the little steps, starting out with community events like the block parties and building up from there. So hopefully as more tax dollars come in, we can start doing bigger events, whether that's building like a kind of like a gorge seating, something of that nature, to where people want to come into Selah.
All right, thanks, Cliff. Chris Lance.
Oh, Nick, thanks for being here. So I'm going to change up for my last question. We got a lot of talk about the future, but looking at Selah today, the way it sits and living here for as long as you have, for yourself, what do you see as a challenge today for Selah, or for recent times, maybe a concern or something you see that you think needs to be addressed to help Selah kind of move forward now, and then looking towards the future? What's a challenge you see now with Selah and growth today?
Today, I mean, I listened to you guys' prior meetings. It's about just the tax dollars. It has decreased from the gas to the sales tax. So it'd be taking steps to get that back. Unfortunately, a lot of people aren't going out, eating as much, they're eating at home. So to get that back, it's just going to be, as we learn more about COVID-19, it's how we can adapt to bring in businesses that not necessarily double up what we have here, but new businesses that people want to attend or go to.
Thank you, Chris. Russ Carlson.
Hey, Nick, thanks for joining us. I would like to have you select a city that you've visited that has some of the attributes that you wish to see in Selah in the future.
As far as the attributes, I mean, I know it's a smaller town, not as big as Selah, but they have kind of, it's the right mix. It'd be like the Quincy Gorge area. They're right there on the river. They bring in those watershed, those bigger events, and that they're close by, which we are, to like other cities like Spokane or Wenatchee, something of that nature. So I think it's just going to be, we do have a good location because we are close to water, close to the mountains. So it's getting, I think, that kind of like single space area to where people want to come to, like I said, the concerts or comedy or something of that nature.
All right, thank you, Russ. So Nick, I have one more question for you. How would you handle differently the city's actions with the COVID-19 pandemic?
I think we covered it earlier at the beginning. Just differently, I wouldn't really do anything, because I think the first month of everything, no one really knew much about this virus, but as it went on day by day, we learned a little bit more. Just with Selah doing the proclamation, saying to businesses, hey, you can open, we're not going to come knocking on your door or anything. I think it was a good start, showing that Selah's here for the community, for the businesses, for the people. But I wouldn't have changed anything. I thought it was a good step, starting step, and maybe as time goes on, it could evolve to a little bit more. So trying to maybe do the indoor seating at restaurants, stuff of that nature, with social distancing.
All right. All right, thank you, Nick.
All right, thank you.
Madam Mayor, this is Andrew.
Yes.
You have taken approximately 15 minutes. If you're done, that's fine. I just wanted to let you know you were not over time yet.
Okay. Council members, do you have any other questions for Nick?
I have a question. Love to have you tell us about your family.
My family, I have 2 kids. Like I said, my son Bryce just graduated Saturday. My daughter Lexi is a freshman at Selah, and then my wife is a nurse at Memorial. We're going on 19 years of marriage. Hasn't always, like, you know, marriage isn't always smooth sailing, so it's had its up and down, but I wouldn't change it for the world. Have my sisters live in town. My parents, they used to live here, but they moved away to Soton. But yeah, it's just, that is my family. So it's been a blast. So like I said, it hasn't been a smooth ride, but it's been a ride.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Do we have any other council members? What's the question? All right, Nick. Do we have Suzanne? Is she here, Andrew?
Roy Sample is your next candidate, and he is in the waiting room.
Okay. Oh, you're right. Sorry.
All
Okay.
right. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
your mask off during your office? Yep. Okay. Put all that right there. Yeah. I'll just get you make sure you're set up. You're gonna want to look right here when you respond.
Okay, I can do that.
And if you have any issues with your sound, I'll be right
See if I can look.
right around the corner.
Okay, I'll see if I can look beautiful.
Hello, Mr. Sample.
Hi, how are all of you?
We are good. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes to introduce yourself to the council and the public.
Well, my name is Roy Sample, and I live here in Selah at 3 Allen Court now. Recently moved there from where I was, and my wife Arlie is, we live by ourselves. I had, let's see, 5 children graduated from Selah High School. I currently, I think I have 9 grandchildren. I have to count it up every once in a while to make sure. And some of the proudest things in my life are that I have 5 children. Every one of them got a college degree. And 2 of my grandchildren, one was in the United States Air Force Academy, and the other one, one of my granddaughters is now in the U.S. Navy. I don't know there's much more I can do to introduce myself. I have previously served on the city council and on the Yakima and the City of Selah Planning Commission. And most of my work over the last 12, now nearly 19 years, has been on the land development business and building houses here in Selah and around Yakima County. Not much more I can say for myself.
Okay. Thank you, Roy. So I'm going to ask you some questions. What do you think the city should be doing in relation to the COVID-19 response?
That's a tough one. I'm not sure anybody's got that answer yet today. My only word of caution has ever been that when I think I said this to you and Don once, that my concern is that everybody wants to get open, and I understand it's the best thing, it's really hurting businesses, everybody in town and in the country not being open, not being able to make a living. There's no doubt about it. Concern is this going to come back at some point if we start now and we go too fast? And if we had to get back in even a worse strain of the same thing? Because I brought up to you that back in 1918, they thought when they had the swine flu, they thought they had it conquered after about 4 months. It was done. Then it came back as a stronger strain. And I'm not trying to orate, but right after World War II, Winston Churchill, the British Prime Minister, remember, said, "Those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it." And I think we have to be careful about that. As far as the reaction is to what we can do, I think we have to wait and see with the governor's orders and whatever. I know there has been a lot of, I don't know, conspiracy theories about the media and creating all this and how bad it is and whatever. There's a million opinions. When you read it on social media, it's just all kinds of thoughts out there. And I think I tend to agree with the medical experts as much as possible. And I tend to, I don't know if Jay Inslee had a right to shut the state down or not. I think that's a matter for the courts to decide. I certainly can't determine it. I do know that when he was in the city of Selah, back with Peters, Fowler, and Inslee's attorneys, I had him for my attorney for 1.5 years, 2 years, and he did a good job for me. Now, that's my only experience with the man. His political views are not, I don't know anything about him. I don't necessarily agree with him, but I got along with him well. I know I answered your question because I don't know if anybody's got the answer to your question.
All right, thank you, Roy. Roy, what do you believe are a council member's primary responsibilities, and how do you think a council member should interact with city staff?
The city staff?
Yes.
Okay, well, I've never felt that necessarily being on the planning commission or city council made you particularly special. I think what you do is you try to serve the city and where you've been. Now, I have to confess, I've been very fortunate in my life here in Selah. There's no doubt about it. And I think that when I come to apply for this job, it wasn't because I want to be special. It's because I think I can help the city with what I've done and what I know. If, as far as the staff is concerned, I'm fortunate in that I think every single one of them on a first name basis already. Joe, Jeff, whatever. And I think that, what do I say? I can't say much more about them. We've had some disagreements. I don't always agree with them, but at least I got my opinion across to them.
All right, thanks, Roy. On your application, you listed several of the priorities you desire for the city of Selah. Please choose one and explain what measures you would suggest we take to implement those changes.
Quite honestly, I didn't keep them. Can you read me one of them out?
Yep, I can do that, Roy. Let's see. Figure out where we want to go and how we want to get there as a city over the next 10 to 20 years. That was one. 2 is help businesses retain and gain customers. And 3 was gain new business, but still retain the small town feeling.
Well, I think the small town feeling is important, but sometimes I read a lot on social media, and we hear people complain and say that, well, Selah's being overrun by renters and this sort of thing and whatever. Well, sometimes we got to remember that we are part of the state of Washington, part of the United States, and everything else that's going to happen in the country is going to happen to us. And I think it's important that we look at the future. We have to understand that I've been in land development, building houses around Selah for many years. I think some of the housing things we haven't addressed properly. I think there's alternate ideas we could be doing. I've heard that anybody says when you put 2 units together as a common wall or a duplex or a triplex, whatever you want to call them, that has to mean they're going to be renters. I think there's other ways of doing housing around town to make things better in town. So, and I guess that answers the question the best I can.
All right, thanks, Roy. So Roy, I have one more question from me for you. And in this crazy world we're in, what is your opinion on how you would handle differently the way the city has handled the COVID-19 pandemic?
You sure you want to hear that?
I do want to hear it.
Okay.
We all have opinions.
Well, when you did the proclamation or the city not enforcing the governor's rules, you might say, I certainly, as a council member, would have, in a lot of ways, asked for to make sure that I would have supported you, because I think we have to have support from everyone in the council with the mayor and all we do. Now, I would say that had I been consulted prior to that, I might have had a little bit of a disagreement with it. Now, that doesn't mean I was right or I was wrong, but as I've stated, we have, in my opinion, medical evidence about what the problem with this virus is. And number 2, we had these orders from the governor saying this is the way it is. And as I said, I'm not the one to judge that. That'll be decided in the courts. So I at least would have brought that up and had some questions about your orders of how we should enforce those rules.
Okay. Okay, so we thank you for your opinion. We are going to move on to the questions from the council. Russ Carlson.
Roy, I'm glad that you did not announce that I was the reason you moved by moving into your neighborhood, but welcome and good to see you again. My question to you is, you were on council for quite some time. You took some time off. What is it that has inspired you or is encouraging you to get back onto council after that time period?
Oh, I got bored. No, I was interested in it again. I left last time because I thought I'd be doing more things out there. I had a couple of business things I was doing. As I said, I've been fortunate, but some of them didn't work out. So I thought I might be gone more, but I'm not. And I enjoyed being on the council. There was no question about it. And I'd like to, if I can be back and be of any help to people now, I'd like to do so. If not, if I'm not the person chosen, then that's the way it goes. As long as I don't have to sit next to you if I'm chosen, Russ.
No, Chris has that privilege. Thanks, Roy.
Chris Lance.
Mr. Sample, it's good to see you. Russell unfortunately took my question, so I'll have to come up with another. Actually, so talking about housing in Selah. So for myself, one of my big things was trying to find something to initiate more affordable housing in Selah for new families starting out or people retiring in our community. What's your feelings on that as far as the housing goes, as far as single family dwellings? What do you feel is kind of a solution for Selah moving forward?
Well, quite honestly, about a year or so ago, I think that Jeff Peters and Don came up with a very good solution on some of that. The thing is, what I don't think many people understand is in the subdivision rules, just as an example. If I know anything, I know the subdivision, the codes, the housing codes, and that sort of thing. Now, in our subdivision rules, say if you have a single family subdivision, 8,000 square foot lots, and you have 10 of them, you are allowed to make one of them, it's called a two-story residence. Now, what is it? It's a duplex. That's what everybody calls it. And I just did a subdivision where we had 20, so I was allowed 2 of them. Well, the complaint that I've heard over this idea of having multiple units, 2, 3, or 4 common walls hooked together, has been, well, gee, they have to be rentals. Well, that's not necessarily true. There's everywhere there are common wall units that are built. You can call them townhouses, you can call them zero lot line, you can call them all kinds of names. But each one of them is separated into an individual tax parcel. Each one of them doesn't have to be rented. And each one of them, homeowners can have them. I've got some of those myself, and people own them. And those are more affordable. You take a single family house on a lot, and you then put 2 of them there, and you're able to sell half the size, you can sell it for a whole lot less money than a single family home. Now, does that ruin a neighborhood? I don't think so. I think if they're well built, well done, I think they're fine. And in fact, we already allow it. Today, we already allow to have a duplex in a single family subdivision. The only difference is they can't be separated. That's my thought. I've thought about that for a long time, and I wondered why we wouldn't do those kind of things, because I think from the people I've sold to and the people that I know, young people need a more affordable housing. Older people don't want to take care of a big yard.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Chris. Mr. Peterson.
Welcome, Roy.
Hi.
There's so much that that we could ask. One of the things that you say on your application is that the issues and needs literally change every month, and council people must be flexible and attempt to make good decisions for the good of the city. With your experience with the city planning commission back to 92 and 10 years with the county before that, could you go into some of these examples of how those changes are and what makes you flexible?
I think we all have to be flexible. But when I was, I was much younger then, in the Yakima County Planning Commission, it was interesting. I seemed to be on planning commissions about the time there were some real changes in each one of the county and the city. In Yakima County, I was on the planning commission when they first came up with some sort of road ordinance about how to do roads and do that sort of thing, gravel roads, what had to be right-of-way widths, all of those sort of things. And I sat there with, I think, 5 of us there, and I was on there for several years, and we had to go through and put the new county road ordinances in place. So I got to sit, there was actually something to work on the planning commission there. When I got into, when I was on Selah's planning commission, that's when the Growth Management Act happened. And we had to go out and investigate and look and see what was happening with all the land, come up with the answers for zoning for various properties. In fact, some of those judgments I gather anymore aren't very popular, but at the time, back in the early 90s, we didn't have a guidebook. We were told to go out for Yakima County and Selah and set the urban growth boundary and see how every parcel of ground is going to be used. Well, we did the best we could. We went around, all around and looked for it. And that was a real change in the city because there just wasn't anything like that at the time. In fact, I say it, you'd be interested in the group that did that. There was a fellow named Carl Graff who was on that commission at the time. Bob Jones, Alan Schmidt, me, and another, I can't remember the other fellow's name. He was a planner for the city of Yakima. But that was quite a group to go out and decide what was going to happen with all the land in the city of Selah. On the council, yeah, last time I was on the council, I was active still in developing land and building. Quite honestly, I found that to be a mistake. People don't like land developers as a normal course of business. I could get up and go to work every day and operate a grocery store, and everybody's saying, well, I'm just trying to make a living at it. Well, that's all the way I looked at being a land developer. That's what I knew how to do, and that's how I was making a living. And in a lot of ways, as I was doing my work, I wished I wasn't on the city council because I had to excuse myself so often. And then there was a couple of times that even, I confess, Don and I had some disagreements at times on some projects. I don't remember ever winning the argument, but at least I got my word across to him about some of what I thought wasn't well taken care of and how things should have been done. But those are many of the things that through my public service that I learned through this. I think that's it.
All right, thanks, Cliff. Kevin Wickenhagen.
So with your experience on land development and commercial development stuff, how would you encourage through some of those changes or making changes, encourage commercial industry into the Selah?
You know, that's a very good question, because the last time I was on council, if I remember, we hired a firm, I think it's right now, to do work that, I can't remember all the details, to promote commercial building and that sort of thing in the city of Selah. Now, I have to confess, it wasn't very successful. We thought it might be, well, we could try. I think you all know, we all know that where we are in Selah with 18 to 20,000 in the school district, the 7,000 or so in the city of Selah, you know, Selah in a lot of ways is, and I think we're trying to change that from what work I've seen, is sort of a drive-through in Yakima, which is a shame. You know, we all wish it wasn't. Everybody's trying to put more businesses in Selah to try to attract people to stay in Selah and shop. The difficulty with that is that Selah was built that way. We can't do anything about that. And I think that we could try. I mean, what I go forward and look at is what the Selah Downtown Association has been doing. Now, Russ is the representative for the city of Selah, and I'm currently serving on the board. And I think everything that we can help support the Downtown Association do on facade grants, landscaping, all that sort of thing, it isn't going to bring new commercial in, but it's going to make the commercial we've got look better. And I think if we look better, we'll have better chance of bringing more people in. Now, the other thing is people talk about population when you're talking about commercial work. Well, there'll be more people move to Selah. And as we have more people, we'll probably have a better chance of having more commercial work. I mean, commercial buildings, commercial businesses, and that sort of thing. So what I say we could do to promote it is, in a lot of ways, do what we've been doing. I don't know that we can make a big radical change in a year or so, but I think as we continue to work on it, it'll get better.
Thank you.
Okay.
Roger Bell.
Hi, Roy. Good to see you again.
Hi, Roger.
Besides your contracting and development background and experience, what would you consider to be the strongest attribute that you bring to the city council to come back on?
Well, I'd like to say I'm smart, but that's probably a matter of opinion. Well, I've been around here for 40 years. I pretty much know most of the town, a lot of the people. And I believe that with my experience, I hope that I could be of help. And then the other part is, when you say I was in the development business, I obviously, as an engineer, I do understand roads, I do understand water, I do understand sewer, how curb and gutter goes in, what streets are, what they should look like, where they are, where they need to go. And that idea of planning, you know, because as I said, I worked a lot of years when I was on the planning commission, those years with the Growth Management Act, and now our city planning, the urban area, and that sort of thing. That's what I know the best, and that's what I think I can be the most help on.
Thank you, Roger. Jackie.
Hello, Mr. Sample.
Hi.
You were on the city council 2014 through 2017. What do you feel was your most important contribution to the community as a council member during that time?
Well, it wasn't doing my own land developments, I can tell you that. Oh, I think that, you know, during that time, there again, I'd probably go back more to the developments than anything else. There was a few things I didn't like, you know, and I said so. But I hope we added, my opinion, added some to making the city better. Now, what you've asked is a very hard question, because number one is several years ago, and I don't know if I remember it all or not. But when there were a lot of things happened through that period of time that I think we had. When I first started, we had a different mayor. We had a different city manager. And then about halfway through, we came up with a new mayor and the city manager who was hired by the mayor before. And sometimes working on the city council with those situations, it was more like trying to educate people and understand what they were doing as much as anything, because, you know, you have those changes right in the middle. Everything sort of reoriented is what it did. I don't know if I've answered your question or whether I can remember. I can't remember anything specific that I was really great at during that time.
Thank you.
Okay, Andrew, how are we on time?
He's taken his full 20 minutes already.
Okay, well, Mr. Sample, thank you.
Well, thank you for interviewing me. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, we are now going into our next candidate, Suzanne Vargas.
We'll be back at 6 o'clock though. We might be able to come back at 6 o'clock to hear the decision. Go ahead, Mr. Sample. That speaker can be a little finicky. So if the light turns off, just play with the power button until it turns on.
Okay, got it.
Okay, Gerald, good to go. We'll be on the end.
Thank you. Hello.
Welcome back, Suzanne.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So Suzanne, I would like you to take up to 5 minutes to introduce yourself to the council and the public.
Okay. Well, hello, council. Thanks for having me here today. I'd like to tell you guys a little bit more about myself, who I am, and maybe touch on a few items that I skipped over last time I was here. So my name is Suzanne Vargas, as you guys already heard. I moved to Selah with my family just over 2 years ago after living in Ellensburg for 12 years. Of the other areas in the valley, Selah really stood out to us for a lot of reasons, but the main ones being its lower taxes, beautiful views, it had great schools, we felt safe here, and it had a really familiar small town feel that we loved. So with an 18-month-old at home and our second baby on the way, my husband and I chose Selah as the family we wanted to raise, or as the city we wanted to raise our family in, and we've been so glad that we did. So as I mentioned a few months ago, I've held both the position of a student and a professor at CWU. I graduated with my bachelor's in nutrition and dietetics at the top of my class, and then I was awarded a full ride scholarship for my master's in exercise science. After graduation, I worked as an adjunct professor, and this job is really mind-opening for me. It showed me the importance of listening, I think maybe for the first time, really with the intention of understanding what somebody was saying rather than my intention to respond. And it also taught me the importance of taking the time to really learn what makes people tick. So despite teaching, I taught a lot of really similar classes. I was really surprised every time at how different each class was, just based on what the people that were in the class brought to it. So I learned to be steadfast in my teaching objectives, but really fluid in how I taught them. And I would bring the same fluidity and open-mindedness to city council as well. During my time in Ellensburg too, I spent 7 years working for Iron Horse Brewery, and much of that time I spent as the retail manager. And last time I was here, I discussed a lot about the troubles and triumphs that came along with the immense growth that happened while I was there. Specifically moving from the business incubator to a new retail space in a historic downtown building. Throughout this period of immense growth, my goal was always to drive the company forward, but still preserve the qualities and the characters that made people want to patron and work at Iron Horse in the first place. And perhaps most importantly, I needed to do this while staying on budget. So I believe the cornerstone of any successful business, city, entity really is its ability to set and accomplish goals that support the overall mission within a specified budget. And I was able to get creative and accomplish many of our lofty goals during my tenure at Iron Horse. I know I spoke last time about my love for our incubator space, that tiny little room with the wood paneling, line out the door. But what I didn't mention last time is that I actually took that wood paneling along with us when we moved to the new space and used it to make a focal point on the wall of the new space downtown. And in fact, I reused or repurposed almost every item we could move. So the old wooden bar claimed a new corner. The pine shelving unit was repurposed for merchandise. I found a local craftsman to make a few larger tables that we could mix in with our existing smaller ones. And reusing our existing items created a comfortable and familiar space that our customers loved, but most importantly, it saved Iron Horse Brewery thousands of dollars. Resourcefulness really allowed me to stay in line with my budget while also still pulling together a cohesive space. This is a trait I'm familiar with, resourcefulness. I was resourceful then, and I can be resourceful now for the city. And I realize now more than ever, we're gonna have to be resourceful in making our limited funds stretch without sacrificing that small town feel that's so important to Selah, and that I know you all have worked so hard to uphold over the years. Personally, I'm objective, ethical, honest. I don't have any special interests or bone to pick within the community. And as a woman with a young family, I'd represent and give voice to a really important and growing part of our community. And as a city council member, I would seek to continually move our city forward, but with a respect towards our history, and while still preserving those very same qualities that attracted me to Selah in the first place. And really, it would just be an honor to serve alongside all of you. With that, I would love to answer your questions.
Thank you. Suzanne, what do you think the city should be doing in relation to the COVID-19?
I think they should be doing things. I was encouraged to hear about you guys relaxing the city codes for the parking for restaurants in anticipation of a phased reopening based on capacity. I think that was a really smart way to support our businesses and allow them to get some more revenue as we slowly reopen through the phases. I also liked hearing about kind of the personal approach you guys were talking about, of Dawn personally reaching out and talking with business owners, just letting them know that the city's here to support them and really being willing to make that personalized response for them. I think that was great. I think support for businesses as we go forward can be important, whether that be on social media. I know when I worked through the EDA, that was something they did a lot of in Ellensburg. They would cross-share businesses' posts on their city pages. I think that was of big benefit to them. And I think also just maintaining a connected community feel with events that can maintain social distancing. So things like the cruises, the 4th of July fireworks, I think that's all really great things for our community to maintain as well.
All right, thank you. What do you believe are a council member's primary responsibilities, and how do you think a council member should interact with the city staff?
I think our primary responsibilities are really just being a good steward of the tax dollars. I think city council should establish a vision and goals for the city and then pass ordinances and allocate money that supports it. Then as for interacting with the city staff, I think I mentioned this last time, but I would really just look to what this specific council already considers the norm or the most efficient way. So whether that be through the city manager, through the mayor, directly to them, I would be open to whatever's already established as the best way. But I think either way, the most imperative and important thing is that the council expresses a great deal of respect for the city staff and asks good questions and values them as just really the primary and the closest source to the knowledge.
All right, thank you. On your application, you listed several of the priorities you desire for the city of Selah. Please choose one of those and explain what measures you would suggest we take to implement those changes.
So I guess I'll talk about the multi-use properties. I think as the council continues to work through the sub-area plan, I'd suggest really a long-term focus in the growth plan on multi-use properties within the central urban area. So specifically, I'm referring to multi-use properties that have ground floor commercial and then above ground residential, or even other things that complement each other. Think boutique hotels with office spaces, coffee shops. You even see a lot of just dentist office or hair salons within those spaces. I've even seen green spaces in some. I think they just add a really great sense to a downtown. And I know by increasing walkability and that sense of community, there are studies that show that that's tied to increased economic viability for the town. So I think that'd be a great spot to focus our attention as we're planning for growth. And I think specific actions we could take is consider rezoning that would allow these types of properties to exist here in different places, and then also seek good people to utilize them through resources like the Yakima Valley Development Association.
All right, thank you. What is your philosophy regarding fiscal management as far as a city council member is concerned?
In a limited resource community, I don't think we really have any option but to be conservative. And being as I think that's our primary role, is to be good stewards of the tax dollars. I think that we have to be conservative and not spend every dollar we have, and really allocate our resources towards the things that matter most, and try to stretch our dollar as far as we can.
All right. Suzanne, one more question from me.
Yeah.
In our ever-changing daily world that we have right now, how would you handle differently the city's actions with the COVID-19 pandemic?
How would I handle them differently? I think I would have had a different alternative to the proclamation, or more careful wording of what it did intend. I think the way it was worded and talking about a lack of local enforcement for something that, from my understanding, is supposed to be enforced through the state with business licenses, I think it was really confusing to the public. And I think a different action or better wording we could have found a different way to alleviate the concerns that you guys were referencing of businesses owners being concerned there's, a city employee peeking through their window to be sure that they're complying. I think there's a better way to address those concerns that wouldn't have caused so much confusion among the public.
Yeah, you're correct there. We learned. But thank you, Susan. Now the council members are going to ask you some questions.
Okay.
Let's start with Jackie. Jackie, are you on there?
Can you hear me now?
Yep, now I can.
Okay. Welcome back, Suzanne. Thank you for applying again. Yeah. In your priorities, you state that you'd like to attract businesses to fill vacant properties downtown. What do you feel the city could do differently to accomplish this?
The most specific one I can think of is having it listed on that, was it the Yakima Valley Development Association? I think that's a really good resource that it doesn't look like we're currently utilizing. I can't find any properties in Selah, and we really have some great ones. So I think getting listed on there could attract, or even just catch the eye of maybe an outside person that we may not otherwise connect with.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Roger.
Yes, Suzanne, welcome back again.
Thank you.
You accomplished quite a bit with Iron Horse, different roles there.
Yeah.
Besides that experience and knowledge from that, what would you consider to be the most important attribute that you would bring to the city council?
I think I would bring just an outside and a different perspective. I think as being a young woman with a young family, I think I utilize different areas of the city than a lot of the average people do. I think I could give good feedback just based on my experiences living here with young kids. And I think kind of that outside perspective of somebody who's maybe only been here 2 years, I think it would give some diversity to city council. And I think it could be a really valuable viewpoint.
Thank you, Roger. Kevin.
So you expressed your interest in enjoying the small town feel.
Mm-hmm.
Balance the small town feel at the same time needing to ever increase revenues just for operations.
Yes. Sorry, could you repeat the question? How I would balance the two?
How you would balance the two.
between the small
The
town.
small town feel and increasing the revenues for the future operation of the city.
In a lot of ways, I don't feel like they're at odds. I think that by supporting a small town feel, a town that people want to walk around, want to bring their kids, a town that holds events and really just makes Selah special, kind of what separates it from, you know, a pass-through town, like I know is some people's perception, I think supports businesses. And I think when businesses prosper, the city will too.
Okay.
Thank you, Roger. Kevin?
That was me.
Oh, that was you. Well, that's who we need. We need to talk to Cliff then. Kevin, you're darked out. I can't really see your face. Go ahead, Cliff.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
I notice it doesn't matter whether we do these candidates alphabetically or just random drawing. You seem to end up last, and I hope you don't take that personally.
Last but not least.
Throughout your application, you talk about your experience, much of which sounds like it's implementation of policies, and with the city council being more of a policy group rather than an action group, how can you take your experiences and relate that into the council experience?
I think through a lot of my experiences, one of the biggest things I've learned is how to ask the right questions and how to get the information I need to make a good decision or, you know, work on those policies behind the scenes. So I think a lot of my experiences would give me a viewpoint after seeing the other side and having such a love for downtowns. And I think with that, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. Could you repeat your question one more time? I think I'm getting off base here.
With your experience sounding so much like more of a boots on the ground action person, how do you relate that experience to being on the council, which is more of a policy organization rather than an action organization?
Okay, I think a lot of it would help me, a lot of my background would help me anticipate needs of things that come up. It would teach me, like I mentioned, how to ask, you know, really the right questions and just gather that information I need. I think being on the other side and being kind of the boots on the ground would serve me well and offer a different perspective into the problems and policies and the behind the scenes work that I know city council faces.
All right, thank you, Cliff. Chris.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
So I'm going to change it from your history from your background in Ellensburg and go to more modern day as being a young mother and raising a family and the daily hustle and bustle and run around of Selah and taking kids here and there. What do you see as a young adult raising a family in Selah? What do you see as things that may be challenging in a day or things you may have ideas of to change to make your own daily life or people's daily life easier, or things that you see in the future you'd like to see change to maybe make things better for your kids?
I think a lot of the things, a lot of good things are coming to mind of reasons we moved, you know, maybe from Ellensburg to Selah. The volunteer park was super encouraging and exciting to have. I love that the library is right downtown, walkable to other things. That does kind of leave me, if I picture just kind of my magic wand of something I would love to have for kids, is a more walkable, friendly downtown. I get that we have to have, you know, the 4 lanes because people got to get from point A to point B, and we have a lot of people moving on them. But events, maybe that we can find a location where a road is shut down that provides easy access for people to patron the businesses, I think will be great for businesses and families alike. I know we have some downtown events like the trick or treat, which was really fun, but it was a little bit nerve wracking having a 3-year-old that I'm not sure if he's going to see some candy thrown and try to dart out into traffic. Like it's hard sometimes to come to the events downtown with young kids that can be unpredictable without being, you know, the lady with her kid on a leash. So some more events that could really be walkable, I think would be really great. But otherwise, I think Selah does a great job. I think we have, you know, Selah Gym Kids, we have a lot of things to offer them. And it would just be really fun to be on the city side and be able to support them from that side as well as patron them with my kids.
Thank you, Chris. Russ?
Welcome back, Suzanne. One of your, your experience there in Ellensburg with the Iron Horse Brewing, you made several changes in job responsibilities. You talked about one of them being the human resources, and you switched from a outsourced party to an in-house human resource.
Mm-hmm.
What was your biggest challenge during that time, and how did you overcome that challenge?
My biggest challenge in that time was just, you don't know what you don't know. And so I would come across HR questions, some very specific and legal in matter. And I found myself sitting sometimes, you know, where do I even look for that information? I really had to quickly build a repertoire and a baseline knowledge so that I could answer those more advanced questions and really lay the framework. Because when we were switching, we switched over from a third party, as you said, and we wanted to bring it in-house. So it was my job to lay the groundwork and figure out how we could do that. And it was hard not having any formal background in HR. So I quickly just aligned myself with a mentor that was able to help me answer questions, or more importantly, just point me in the direction of where that information could be found. Because I think there's one thing, when I set my mind to something, I learn quickly, but I was so out of water sometimes I didn't know where to learn it. So really aligning myself with a mentor that had that knowledge that could point me to good, reliable information, and I could find it there was really, really helpful to me and really needed.
All right, thank you, Russ. Well, thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you.
This is the end of our study session and the end of our interviews. So we are going to take a break, and we will see you back at 5:30.
Thank you.
We are all here. Everybody ready? Yep. Okay, we are now called to order. Roll call, Monica.
Councilman Wickenhagen.
Here.
Councilwoman Mattson.
Here.
Councilman Peterson.
Here.
Councilman Bell.
Here.
Councilman Lance.
Here.
Councilman Carlson.
Here.
Thank you, Monica. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for prayer. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's pray. Father, this is a challenging time. It's a challenging time not only for the city of Selah, but for the businesses of Selah, for the people, for the schools, for our city council together today. I pray for wisdom. I pray for strength. I pray for unity as we navigate the business that is important, that affects so many lives. And so we ask for your hand on this meeting, on each of the council members, and on the staff of the city of Selah. And we pray this all in your strong name, Jesus. Amen.
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 Thank you. We are now going into a 45-minute executive session to consider the qualifications of a candidate for appointment to elective office, RCW 4230110-1H. And we will see you in 45 minutes.
Give me a moment to remove anyone who remains.
Okay. I'm leaving my headphones plugged in, but I'm not listening. Okay, I'm going that way. Did you go ahead, Sherry. Go ahead with the executive session. Go ahead.
Sherry, please turn your video on.
Oh, I'm looking for my video. Oh, there it is right there. Got it.
Your meeting has been locked and all other attendees have left.
Okay. Thank you. Just a quick note, everybody. Council members, if you happen to be by City Hall, you've got to come into Andrew's office. It is spotless. It smells so good. I don't know if you can see this, but I'm impressed. Okay, let's go, guys. We're going to start our executive meeting on our council members.
Okay, Sherry, if we could just do a round robin around the table with some opening thoughts, and then try to, as we did last time, try to get into the top two. Hey, Kevin. It's Don. Sorry.
Yeah.
So is Chris having a good time refereeing these meetings on Wednesdays?
She comes home so frustrated.
And I'm sure that I'm helping her a lot on those, right?
Well, to a great deal, she agrees with most everything you're saying. So I think she feels like she has one ally at least.
Well, unfortunately, I'm going to miss tomorrow morning's meeting. It's my Wednesday highlight now.
Oh, yeah. She wishes others were as vocal as you were. It's kind of how to put it.
She tells me that folks call in and say, "Yeah, he was right," and she tells them, "Yeah, well, why don't you speak up?"
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. She had a meeting or had a conversation with Vicky.
Yeah.
And she's getting pretty upset with the powers that be as well.
Yeah. Well, that's my take on it as well.
It's just everybody feels like their hands are tied.
Yeah. Yeah. Everything, the decision-making process has been just absolutely taken away from our elected leadership in the county. And that's the problem. We have unelected people who are in bureaucratic positions making momentous socioeconomic decisions based on what I discern as very, very questionable mathematical analysis. And they call it science, but it's when you don't know the denominator, I don't know how you can make a decision on a third of the economy.
Well, I sent all of our representatives just a short message that they need to change the emergency powers of the governor, limit it to 30 days before an emergency session is called. Because no one person should have this amount of power for this length of time.
Amen to that.
The legislature gave those powers away over 3 decades in graduated response or in graduated actions to the point where they have absolutely no power with regard to emergency powers at this point.
Yeah, I sent in on an MRSC conference on it, and they did. They gave those powers away, and it's like it's time to get some of them back. But I just thought, you get 30 days in an emergency, then you have to do something else. You need your representatives, because the feeling right now is that absolutely don't have any.
Recording now, Monica.
Okay. All right. Just a second. Good.
I don't know unless I send you a link, so I can't do it right now.
Ready? You want to shut it?
All right, Madam Mayor, whenever you're ready.
Okay, we are back from our executive session. No decisions were made. Do we have a motion to elect our new council member?
Madam Mayor, I make a motion to elect Susan Vargas as the new council member.
Okay.
I second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Kevin to nominate Susan Vargas, a second by Jackie. Roll call, Monica?
Councilman Wickenhagen?
Yes.
Councilman Mattson?
Yes.
Councilman Peterson?
Yes.
Councilman Bell?
Yes.
Councilman Lance?
Yes.
Councilman Carlson?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Okay, we now have a new council member. We will do the swearing in. Monica, is she here in the other room?
Dale's going to escort her into my office and they will swear in on camera there.
Okay. To our other applicants for council members, guys, you guys are, your answers and everything was great. You would be a great asset for anything that we have coming up in the city. So please stay involved, be part of this team that keeps our city up and running. Thank you. I have sleeping all the time. That's something else. No shutting. Oh, shutting. It didn't happen to anybody. Yeah.
Stand over here. So if you would repeat after me, I, Suzanne Vargas,
I, Suzanne Vargas,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Washington
and the Constitution and the laws of the state of Washington
and all local ordinances,
and all local ordinances,
and that I will faithfully and impartially perform
and that I will faithfully and impartially perform
and discharge the duties of the office of city council member
and discharge the duties of the office of city council member
according to law and the best of my ability.
according to law and the best of my ability.
Congratulations, Suzanne. And I'll just have you sign here. And then I think what we'll do is scoot you up and you'll have your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Suzanne, if you can tilt your camera down a little.
It doesn't, there you go. It looks like it's balance point right there. Did that work?
Yeah, that's great.
All right, welcome, Suzanne.
Thank you.
Okay, we are going to move on. Agenda changes, we have none. Public appearances, introductions, and presentations, we have none. Getting to know our business, we have none. Communications, oral, we have none. Written, this is in your packet. Proclamations and announcements, we have none. Consent agenda. All items listed with an asterisk are considered routine by the City Council and will be enacted by one motion without discussion. Should any council member request that any item on the consent agenda be considered separately, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and become part of the regular agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda as printed.
Second.
It's been moved to approve the consent agenda by Cliff, seconded by Russ.
Moved by Roger.
Oh, sorry. Moved by Roger, seconded by Russ. Thank you, Russ. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Monica, please read the consent agenda.
Approval of minutes, May 26, 2020 council meeting, and approval of claims and payroll.
Thank you. Public hearings. This is an open public record hearing to consider the resolution adopting the 6-year transportation improvement program for secondary and arterial streets within the city of Selah for the years 2021 to 2026. Mr. Henney.
This is Jeff Peters. We're experiencing some Zoom issues here, so Mr. Henney is coming to my office right now, and I'm going to put the speakerphone on so he can present the item.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, just 2 seconds. I'm going to put you on speaker. Your item's on right now. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Henney is going to present his item. Hey, Joe.
This is item N1 that you're on.
Yes. L1?
Okay, so N1 is that the,
No,
that's
Joe,
to have a,
Joe, you're
have a
on,
pub-
you're on L1, the open public hearing.
yeah, this is L1 public hearing. Consider for the resolution adopting for the transportation, the 6-year transportation improvement program, secondary and arterial streets within the city of Selah for the year 2021 to 2026. Requesting the city council hold a public hearing to take public testimony. This is the same list of projects that I presented to council at our last meeting. I can read them if you'd like.
Joe, go ahead for the attendees that are on here.
Okay. The priority number 1 project is Valley View Avenue, South 3rd, and Southern Avenue, 1st Avenue. And cost of $2,245,800. Fremont sidewalk projects. That is a $333,590 project. Number 3, Selah pedestrian bicycle path study, $57,000. 4, Southern Avenue. That is $617,600, and that's from 3rd to 5th. West Goodlander Road is for a total reconstruct. That is for $3,635,700. South 3rd Street. That is from Valley View to Southern. That is $1,960,800. East Natchez Avenue from SRE 23 or Weenass Avenue to Railroad Avenue, and then out to SR 823, I-82. I'm all messed up now. East Natchez Avenue, that is $1,987,300. North 4th Street from Natchez Avenue to West Fremont Avenue, $535,200. And Valley View Avenue and South 5th, $2,724,600. East Goodlander, Lancaster Road traffic signal. That's on right there in front of the entrance into Carlin Park. That is $658,200. And a transportation citywide analysis for $300,000. That's it.
All right, thank you, Joe. So we are going to open up for a public hearing. If anybody from the public that is attending on Zoom and wants to speak up, there is a blue button at the bottom of your screen, I believe, and you'll just need to click on that and it'll raise your hand. And we will call on you. So Andrew, I don't see anybody raising their hand. Is that correct? Is that what you?
Correct. Neither do I. I'd give it another 10
Yeah,
seconds or so.
Yeah.
Andrew, this is Don. Do we have others attending the meeting? And how are they accessing on here for the council members so they know?
So they had the last 2-week period to provide written response if they opted not to attend the meeting. That written response would have been put in the record had it arrived prior to the packet on Friday. Had it arrived later than that, we would have read their response into the record. Anyone who is on the telephone or on Zoom can now participate. There is currently only 6 total attendees, including Mr. Peters. So I don't anticipate that any of those attendees is choosing to speak.
Thank you.
Okay, so does any of the council members have any questions on this? I see you shaking your head. Does that mean no? Okay, we are going to close the public.
Oh, Sherry.
Yes.
Sorry, I was trying to hit my hand button. So the pedestrian bicycle path study, what all is that exactly is that entailing for 57,000? What are we looking at? A connection to the Greenway down First Street, or a designated bicycle path along Third, or?
That is for a study to see where we want to put a bicycle path or a bicycle network throughout the city.
Okay, okay.
Okay, seeing nobody's hand go up, we're going to now close the public hearing and move on. General business under new business. Jeff Peters.
This is City Planner Jeff Peters, council members. This is item M1, small a. You recall some of the existing council members, our new members, out of the end of last year, start of this year, I came before the council and spoke to the city council and asked them whether they wanted the planning commission to review the fee schedules for the land use applications in the city, as they had not been updated for, I want to say it was over 10 years. And so by voice vote of the council at that time, the council indicated that they wished that the planning commission would review all the fees of other cities, and the cost for us to process the land use applications. And so we took, myself and the planning commission, took about 5 public meetings to go over all of the information and to tally all of our existing costs to process the land use applications and compare them to other cities and other cities' processes. And we completed our final recommendations, which the Planning Commission has presented to you into a findings document and I believe a resolution. At this point in time, this is an informational item only. We're asking that the City Council review the Planning Commission's recommendation on the land use fees, formulate questions and things like that with regard to what you would want to ask the Planning Commission and or planning staff with regard to those fees, and then work with the city administrator and mayor to maybe set a study session date, either at maybe the council retreat or a study session later on this year when we're out of social distancing, as that may be a little bit more conducive to having this open discussion upon how we've come up with the fees that we have.
Hey, Jeff, this is Don. Could you kind of boil it down to the top 3 or 5 changes that you think are significant for the council to understand on this thing, please?
Well, I guess that's kind of hard to do succinctly, but mainly what the Planning Commission's findings with regard to the fees is that they took kind of the tact of looking at the fees from what it cost the planning department and city to process the land use applications. And with the exception of only 3 different fees, I believe it was, there might be 1 or 2 other ones, they chose to make the proposed fees match what it costs for us to process the land use applications, no more or less. The ones that they chose to lessen were things like administrative adjustments, minor modifications to plan developments, short plat exemptions, all those sorts of land use applications that are generally affected overall public and not so much the development community. So things like class 3 reviews, rezones, long plats, plan developments, they chose to increase those fees to take into account our cost. And so those are the main fees that you're going to see quite a large increase. I would say too that the members of our planning commission that are involved in the development community, after looking at the proposed fee increases, felt that they were fair and that they were still lower than other communities in Eastern Washington and Western Washington.
Madam Mayor, if I could add, the Planning Commission really worked hard on this. I really want to compliment them on the thoroughness and attention to detail they put onto this. And I'll double down on what Jeff said. Those that are involved or have been involved in development issues, they understood that the hard pill needed to be swallowed with the increases in some of these fees that would directly impact them, but they saw that as fair.
The only other thing I would add is that with regard to the fees for things like Shoreline's master program, the other finding that the Planning Commission made was that they did not want to take action on those fees as the city is in the process of updating its Shoreline's master program based upon Yakima County Shoreline's master program. So at that time, when we bring back that particular development code review process to you, we would likely bring forward a new set of fees for that process at that time. So it coincides with the regulation changes. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. I see some hands up. Roger?
Yes, Jeff, when I look at the comparison of the other cities and to hear a statement tonight that we're under the other cities, I only see Richland and Spokane in general terms as being the cities that we're under. The rest of these cities, our fees currently are higher than theirs, and yet we're going to do that. I don't know how we can support that when other cities aren't supporting that. And I'm just questioning.
What you have to understand when we look at the comparison with the other cities is that those other cities have different processes, and so it's hard to show you on a table, and this is what the Planning Commission struggled with as well. But when you look at those other, just the straight fees that other people are charging for their cities, there's several different dynamics that they take into account. Either a city.
We are looking at the costs that are based on employees that we currently have, and we're trying to pass that on when those employees are already paid for. And I'm just, I'm not opposed to recovering costs, but what I am saying is I don't see that this is favorable for a developer to come into our community when these other communities have much lower fees. I mean, significantly lower fees, $2,500 lower in many cases on the new schedule. And I believe that's going to hurt us going down the road, that we won't be competitive to attracting quality contractors to come here.
So do you want me to respond or are you just making a statement?
I find it difficult to understand the reasoning on why we wanted to do that when the other cities aren't doing that. they're finding a different way to pay for those same things in the other cities. And I'd much rather see how they're paying for it. Are they just absorbing that as a cost of attracting businesses? And that's my real concern. Is this going to be a problem for people coming here with a business and they want their employees to locate here?
The answer is yes. Most cities, they either if you look at like Yakima County, they did a large increase in their fees that was taking into account the total processing cost for their process, whatever that was. But for example, in comparison to the city of Yakima, which I went and did their fee update before I came to the city of Selah, their city council, after going and looking at the cost of everything, they took the option to take what they call a cost share analysis. So they say that they believe that they have a responsibility to share some of the development costs of a new development with the developer. And so they reduced the overall cost of the application, still increasing it by upwards of $500 in some cases or more for the larger applications that are driven like rezones and subdivisions, but less than what it would fully cost them to process. So that's what we're saying. We're not saying that you as a city council have to go and take this recommendation carte blanche. This is just the first step in the process. As the Planning Commission goes through, they look at all of the different cities. They look at our particular processes, because we in the city of Selah have very different process for things like subdivisions and rezones than, I say, the city of Selah or even the city of Grandview. When you involve a planning commission rather than a hearing examiner, generally speaking, that increases the cost for the city to process the application, because there's more staff time involved in the process. But ultimately, also with for example, short plats, which are subdivisions of less than four lots or less. Most cities don't use a planning commission process to approve a short plat. The city of Selah does, and they use the administrator to approve a simple short plat. So what the planning commission and I had to do was to look at all of the other costs for the other cities, but really look at what it is costing us based upon our process to process these land use applications, and then come up with a reasonable approach that would that the planning commission could accept, with whether they wanted to be pro-supportive of development or they wanted to have a developer pays kind of mentality. And they felt that the developer should be paying for the full cost of their development, and the city should not be bearing those costs. So that's why we're saying right now, we want you to look at this information, look at the fees, formulate those questions, and we'll have a study session. And at the end of the day, if the council votes to modify, change certain fees up or down based upon their own findings and feeling, then that's what will be done.
Jeff, Don, real quick, and during the study session, it would not be a problem, I believe, to bring in some, if not all, of the Planning Commission members during that study session to answer your questions or to give you their thoughts on this process and how they came to the conclusions they came to, and give you their unvarnished opinion. If you'd like that, we can do that.
Again, my real concern here is we're raising some fees from $200 to $2,000 to $4,000, and it seems to me we're locking people out of our community by doing that. And again, if we had no development, we still have a planning department and we're already paying for them. So
actually,
I don't understand that. And I think it puts the city in a position that a contractor that's not currently here in town or working will say that they have an unfair advantage of the other contractors. Now you can say, well, they're paying anyway, but we're locking other people out that might drive those costs down.
So Jeff,
yeah,
what you're asking is for us to look at this, for council to look at this packet and form their questions and then schedule a study session. Is that correct?
That's correct. We wanted to get the council this information as early as we can, and so they have plenty of time to look through it, to work through their thoughts, and then work with you and Dawn to schedule a study session, whether it be with the full planning commission or just me, or bring it to the retreat to have these general discussions, because this is a full council discussion with regarding the fees. It's never a simple answer.
Right. And when are you planning on implementing these fees?
Well, there's no implementation date until we have the council goes and decides the direction they want to go. If they turn and at the study session, they decide and give direction that they want to reduce certain fees or increase certain fees, then that's what will be put together in the ordinance. And we will likely put together a findings document for the council as well to go along with it. And then it'll be brought back to the full council for a vote.
Sherry, Don Wayman, I would recommend a target date of not later than 1 January 2021. So, try to get this for the new year if we choose to do so.
But you want to have the study session in the next month?
Whenever would be appropriate given our circumstances for COVID-19 getting done.
Okay, so I see Russ and Kevin both have their hand up. But just keep in mind, a lot of the questions are things that the study session is for. This is a lot of information to look at, guys. And we need to read what the Planning Commission has said and get a better idea. So Russ?
Yeah, so my questions, first question is, do we have minutes from these 5 Planning Commission meetings? Are there minutes taken and provided? During these 5 Planning Commission meetings, did anybody come and object?
Yeah, I believe it's in your packet.
Maybe I missed
Actually,
that.
no, they did not put it in there. Hold on.
I hunted for it, and maybe I missed it, but yeah, I would definitely be interested in seeing the minutes that go along with it to see if people came.
And it was my intent to include that in the packet, and I think that when my planning staff transmitted it, she forgot to insert the minutes along with the agenda. So I will forward those to you in your inboxes first thing tomorrow.
Okay, and then my other statement / question kind of echoes what Roger said. I understand that in 10 years that maybe some updates need to happen, but some of these are significant, and so I'm trying to decide at what point you determine that the taxes that this developer is paying covers some of those costs, and I see some communities are charging nothing on certain modifications or certain reviews or whatever, and so I'm curious what their justification is, and then I'd also be curious. Looks like we picked just several local communities, but what about communities that are more our size, and see how they handle that? comparing ourselves to Yakima, it's good because they're right next to us, but they have a different budget than we do.
Well, I mean, I guess to address your first question, I went down as many cities as I could find that were West Side cities that I could find their fees on, and I went through, and this list, some of the things that people charge are zero. It's really hard for me to determine how their process compares to ours. So what I have to do is basically just go off the face of whatever type of application it is, whether they charge for it or not, or whether they recoup that fee from some other thing. I just don't know that without going and spending hours talking with somebody from those communities upon how each of their fees is based. I found many communities that would charge nothing for a simple, say for example, long plat, but they recouped almost everything and more in the review of the subdivision itself for all of the utility work, the lot lines, and everything. It was all done underneath their engineering fees. Well, I can't go and put in a spreadsheet, that they actually charge, $5,000 as opposed to zero if their actual land use fee shows a zero. So, and there was a lot of communities that just did things differently than us, that things like the short plat, where it's all administrative. Their fee is going to be a lot less than ours because we involve the entire planning commission, and the staff is the one who goes and processes all the land use applications and provides all the decisions and all the materials and the mailings for the planning commission. So our costs are going to be higher because our process is more robust. And when I calculated our fees and our costs for the different applications, I actually erred on the side of being conservative. And if an application, we actually compared the application's time and the amount of money per hour that it costs for my administrative staff and myself to produce the decisions and staff the public meetings. I actually reduced the number of hours by at least a couple on more than one. And we went and compared with existing applications that we've already done and what we were charging for things. So I can't give you a better answer than, with regard to the other communities, we just have to trust that what they have is comparable to what we're doing and process-wise.
Yeah, okay. And then that's makes sense. Then my last question then is, it's a two-part question. First of all, there was a list for an exception, and I realized that we'll discuss this a little bit more down the road, but every community charges nothing except for Wenatchee. They're at $950. We've been charging $330, and now we're going to increase it to $2,500. And I'm assuming your answer is going to be similar to what you've said, is maybe costs are recouped elsewhere, but just wanted to bring that one to your attention because that's one that will come up down the road, I think. And then preliminary long plat appeal, it suggests the suggested fee says appealed to courts. Can you explain that?
Yes. So in our process, the way that a long plat appeal goes, because the long plat, say for example, like the one you just did, I think it was 2 weeks ago for Selah construction, that process goes to the planning commission first for a recommendation from them, and then, to the hearing examiner first for a recommendation, and then the council makes the final decision. Because the council makes the final decision, there is no appealing body beyond the city council. So the next level of review is at the district court level.
Okay, thank you.
Or looper process.
Okay.
So therefore, that's why we wouldn't, charge anything for that process because it's all going to be based upon what the court costs are and
Okay, Kevin, you've had your hand up.
Yeah, Jeff, I have 2 requests if we can. Do you have a worksheet completed for each of these application types just to determine our costs that we could see? And
I believe
what the second is, can we get a say for 2019 the total numbers of these applications that you received?
yes, we did. Let me see if it's in here.
This last a couple pages, Kevin, have the hours associated with it, hourly rate, and everything like that.
Oh.
Yeah, I believe one of those had.
Sorry.
The average.
Page.
Yeah, so the one with the average cost, that is our process, our time for each one of the applications. And I don't see the one we had with the number of applications. But we have that cell spreadsheet saved.
Well, yeah, we've seen some of that in some of our packets, but sorry I missed that. I missed those last 2 pages.
No, that's okay. Like I said, it's a lot of information, and we were trying to keep the spreadsheets down to the ones that the final spreadsheets that the Planning Commission came up with when they made their recommendations. So you weren't just looking at willy-nilly information. But I can certainly include that. That one might take me a little bit longer, but I could probably have it to you sometime next week.
Well, or even just at the study session.
That'd be fine too.
All right, thanks, Kevin. Before we go back to you, Roger, do any of the other council members want to speak up? No? Okay, Roger, go ahead.
I just wanted to make a motion to move it to a study session where we can vet it out properly.
Okay. And we are planning on having a study session on this. Do we need a motion in a second? Monica?
Madam Mayor, no, we do not. We can certainly, we had all intention to do that. So the plan is to bring it back to the council, and I would recommend bringing in as many members of the Planning Commission as we can get to participate in that study session, so we can have a good exchange of information.
Okay. Do we want to schedule the study session now? Do we want to wait?
Madam Mayor, I think that given the fluid situation here and the productiveness that we could achieve by a face-to-face, I would, this isn't a burning issue for the council to understand. I want to take a little bit of heat. I'll go ahead and take it. I directed Jeff to get after this because our fees were not up to date, but and he's done great work. I want to tip my hat to Jeff and the Planning Commission for rolling their sleeves up and getting after this very sticky issue, which is bound to be unpopular any way you look at it. So my goal, because we're looking at budgets, my goal is to have this completed and wrapped up with a bow on it before the new calendar year. And we can look at our budgets with that as some guidance with regard to our planning department. So I would recommend, Madam Mayor, that we can let this slide to a time where we become more flexible and available to each other based on whatever phase Mr. Inslee decides to put us in at a later date.
All right, thank you, Jeff.
Madam Mayor, can I make a recommendation that there was a motion so that it either needs to be retracted or a second or?
Okay. Roger, you have a motion out there. Do you want a second on it? Do you want to retract it?
Well, I'd like a second on the motion to move it to a study session.
Okay.
I'd second that.
Okay, so we have a motion to hold a study session by Roger. We have a second by Russ. Roll call, Monica?
Councilman Wickenhagen?
Yes.
Councilwoman Matson?
Yes.
Councilwoman Vargas? You have to hit the mute, Suzanne. The space bar.
Yes.
Councilman Peterson?
Yes.
Councilman Bell?
Yes.
Councilman Lance?
Yes.
Councilman Carlson?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Monica.
You're welcome.
Once again, thank you, Jeff.
Welcome.
Under old business, we have none. Resolutions, Mr. Hinney.
Yes, this is the part where I asked the city council to adopt a resolution approving the six-year transportation improvement program for secondary and collector arterial streets within the city of Selah, the years 2021 to 2026. And I'm requesting council to approve the attached resolution.
I move that we approve the resolution adopting the 2021 to 26 street improvement plan.
This is Kevin. I'll second it.
We have a motion to approve by Cliff, a second by Kevin. Roll call, Monica?
Councilman Wickenhagen?
Yes.
Councilwoman Matson?
Yes.
Councilwoman Vargas?
Yes.
Councilman Peterson?
Yes.
Councilman Bell?
Yes.
Councilman Lance?
Yes.
Councilman Carlson?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Thank you. Ordinances, we have none. Public appearances, we have none. Reports and announcements. Mr. Peters, you're on here.
Okay, with regard to planning, the city's consultants on the Shorelines Master Program are still working through their, I guess I'll call it their first draft for the revisions required by the Department of Ecology, and we expect to see something here in July or August with their first cut. And Greg Dorn, our planning consultant for the sub-area plan and our amendments to the city's comprehensive plan, is still working on putting together all of those amendments to the city's comprehensive plan, and that will first then go to the Planning Commission for review before it gets sent to the council for adoption and inclusion in as part of the city's comprehensive plan, and that will probably be closer to the end of the year before you see that. More current items, the city just received the approval recommendation from the hearing examiner regarding Selah Construction's plan development. So I'm planning on bringing that to the city council at the first meeting in July. And then we've also completed the 45-day review period for the McLean annexation. So that I'm also planning on, as long as I can get all the pieces together, bringing that to the first meeting in July to the city council for adoption of the ordinance approving that annexation and bringing the property into the city of Selah. And that's really all I have at the moment.
All right, thank you.
Turn it over to Joe.
Well, real quick, East Good Ender Road is moving along. We've been hitting some snags, of course, since we're in that intersection of Goodlander and Main Astor 823. Abandoned stormwater lines in there. There's good stormwater lines. There's water lines, sewer lines, electrical conduit. So we're having problems trying to keep from tearing those out, and we have hit a few. But it's going along. The West Fremont sidewalk from North First Street to North 4th Street looks like it was one of 3 that are recommended for approval. This Thursday at our technical advisory committee at the WICOG, taking a vote on that recommendation. So it looks like we'll be receiving $333,500 and some odd dollars. Put that sidewalk in there. Other than that, trying to keep the parks taken care of, keeping streets, putting in water services, and tomorrow, you may have already got them. You received contracts for Dale to complete some of the dates and whatnot in there, Madam Mayor, and I need for you to sign them, get them back to our consultant, and then on to Central Paving.
Okay.
It's on West Goodlander. I have.
All right, thank you. Chief Hayes. Oh, go ahead.
I have a question for Joe, Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
Just curious on development standards and road blocking. There was a development or a home being built up past 10th, and I can't think of the road, Heritage Hills, I think, or something like that. And the developer, the contractor, cut the pavement across the street to, do whatever. I'm not sure what. Probably access sewer line or water. I don't know. But threw up a couple of cones and then left it with a divot in the ground in the road. No signs, just 4 cones in the road until they got their rigs up there. There was nobody standing there slowing traffic down or anything. What's the standards, requirements on that, and what can be done?
Well, if you cut across the street, you should have had some men working ahead signs up there, and you need to maintain that gravel surface until you get it paved back. I haven't been by there. I haven't seen that. I'll follow up on that tomorrow.
Yeah, they paved it that same day, but it was several hours that it was just a hole in the road, and I happened to be driving through there and went. I mean, there was nobody there. It's just a hole in the road and 4 cones, and it was a trench all the way across the road.
Well, that's not how it should have been done. I'm not aware. I'll have to find out which house that is, and then maybe we'll have a word with the contractor, find out who it is, but that stuff happens.
I can promise you we will have a word with them.
Thank you. And I know it's the house south of one of our planning commission home. Did you catch that, Don?
No, I did not.
I didn't quite understand.
It's a house right next to one of the planning commission's homes.
Okay.
He owns.
And it's up in the Heritage Hills?
Yes.
Okay, well, we'll look.
Okay.
We can figure out who. Can't be that many new permits up there.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Chief Hayes.
So you've probably all seen that we've had 2 protests. They walked down the first time from the high school to the Civic Center. The second time they just met at the Civic Center. Both were done peacefully and there were no issues. We've also had cruise night with the seniors and others, and we've had no issues there either. And that is about all I have, unless you have questions of me.
I have a question. Last several meetings I've asked you about mental health type calls. When we have, I'm assuming that they have a significant decrease in the last couple of weeks, but when we have those types of calls, do we have the department chaplains get involved? Do we have a system that we can engage local churches and social service organizations and mental health professionals for follow-up kind of things?
It depends on what the call is. If it's threats of suicide, the mental health will send someone out, or we will take the person to them. If it's let me see, I can't think of anything else out there that we deal with where we call mental health other than a suicidal subject. If any person asks us for help, we will put them in touch with mental health. Of course, our chaplains can speak with anyone. They're not trained mental health workers, so they have a resource list just like an officer would, where they can call to get someone some assistance in the mental health field. There's also in vehicle with Yakima County and with the Yakima Police Department. They have actually crisis, and I don't remember what the initials are now, but they have health care or mental health workers that drive around with them in the cars and goes to calls to assist. It cuts out quite a bit of time from taking them to a hospital and waiting for a mental health worker to get out of bed. These are embedded with Yakima Police and Yakima Sheriff's Office, and they are available to us too. Did that answer your question?
Well, kind of, sort of, partly. I'm just thinking there's a lot with the lockdown. There's a lot of talk about physical health. There's a lot of talk about financial health, but the emotional, spiritual, mental health kind of thing, health seems to be lost. And is there something that we can do before they need a mental health professional? Is there some way that we can get those types of services involved?
There is. If they apparently need them, we can offer it to them. If they ask for it, we can too. Like I said, we have a resource list of numerous different. One is Washington State or Yakima County Comprehensive Mental Health. Other places are more private, and so they would come out of pocket possibly. I'm not sure where that funding would come from, but and it varies from the YWCA to comprehensive mental health. We can put them in touch with pastors of churches. And then, of course, like I said, we have the two that drive around in vehicles with county. They're available for all of the things you mentioned. Now, I'm not sure how much they're going to get involved with the financial burdens that someone has, and we do not have a resource list for that. But typically, I don't know that we've ever been called for those types of. It's usually people in distress. That depression is taken over. They're suicidal, things like that.
Well, for things like if you go to a DM call, a domestic violence call, is battered women's shelter something that's routinely brought up, or is that something that they need to ask for?
We give them the actual resource list that I was telling you about, and it has the YWCA is what we're talking about when we're talking about usually domestic violence, battered women and their children. That's where they get their help from, to them. So yes, in the domestic violence, we have questions we ask, and we also hand out a resource sheet to every victim of domestic violence.
That answers my question. I just want to make sure we're doing everything that we can to help our citizens any way we can.
Yeah, we do what we can. It's also it's not easy. Everything's voluntary. If they don't ask for it and we don't have a reason to take them in for protective custody, it's very difficult when someone doesn't want help to get it to them. But if they're open to it, we have, like I said, quite a few people that we can turn them toward that would give them some help. Not to mention, every officer in the state of Washington now has to have so many hours of crisis intervention training on de-escalation, on how to handle persons with autism and numerous other mental or disabilities that have to do with cognitive thinking and things like that. But anyway, we have training. We have to continue it every year. We get 2 hours every year for every officer. So we have some training in the area, but we also have professionals all around us that come out and will talk with people if needed.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else?
We appreciate you.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Thank you. Night. Chris, did you have your hand up?
No, Hayes covered it. It was along with what Cliff was asking, so no, thank you.
All right. I don't think we have anybody else on here, unless Andrew, do you have a report?
I have no report for the council.
Okay. Rob?
I have no public report.
Let's go. Sorry, I went backwards there. Let's do Roger.
No report, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Kevin.
The Yakima Valley Tourism Board met. It was not good. It was not good news, as you can imagine. They've cut the hours on quite a few of their staff. I believe 5 people. They've cut the wages of the CEO by 20% for a few months. The good news was that construction on the convention center is unabated because they're all empty. So they were able to remove carpet and stuff ahead of schedule. The only bright news, I guess, in it is travel is increasing slowly. So there are more people out, are more people staying in some of the hotels, but it's still wait and see. And we all know how the Yakima County is and where we're at. I don't know that's probably the worst part. Nobody really knows what to expect and how it's all going to work out. That's my report, Madam Mayor.
Thanks, Kevin. Russ?
The SDA met. It was just a good meeting. It was efficient and quick. Most of the grant recipients are about finished with their projects, so you'll see them taking place around town. Burger Ranch is one, Selah Vision is one, Seal Creek Dental is one, and then Farmers Insurance, Christina Williams was one. And so most of the projects are done and looking good. For the what's the other board? I can't think of the name all of a sudden. Anyway, for the LTAC, we aren't having any meetings, and we're holding off on issuing any grants, any funding, or at least making recommendations of that funding until we get a better picture on funds coming in.
All right, thank you, Russ. Chris?
The only thing I have is to add to what the chief was saying. We had some protests this weekend. It happened the evening of our cruise night, and I was there all night. Don was out there for a while. It looked like everybody handled themselves professionally, and being involved with car clubs from the past, a lot of people in the valley are appreciative that Selah is allowing people to practice their freedom and enjoy their evening with their family and friends and spouses, and be able to come out and enjoy the evening and their vehicles and share a little bit of laughter and everything. So just want to let everybody know that in my mind, I think we're doing the right thing by allowing people to come out and practice a few rights on the weekends. It's a good thing.
Thank you, Chris. Jackie?
I have no report, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Cliff?
I also was downtown Saturday, and I stopped by the protesters and said, I assume you're here to have your voice heard, and so I'm here to listen. I had a very enjoyable conversation with one of the organizers. It was pretty non-productive. I told them that if they would like to continue the dialogue beyond headlines and slogans, that I'd be happy to meet with them and facilitate any other meetings that they thought that might be beneficial. And not too terribly surprising, as of this morning, I haven't heard back from them. I would like to take an opportunity to congratulate the class of 2020. And this is rather unique time to be graduating and moving on into the next phase of life. But I just encourage all of them, wish them the best of luck in pursuing their dreams of whatever that dream might be. We're now touting as heroes professions that 6 months ago were virtually taken for granted and ignored. And so, if nothing else, these last few months have demonstrated that we all are important and we all are essential in our own way.
Thank you, Cliff. Mr. Wayman?
Are we going to let Suzanne talk?
Oh, I'm sorry, Suzanne. I am so sorry.
That's okay. I can't say I have any report, but I'm looking forward to serving alongside all of you, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Sorry again. Mr. Wayman.
Thank you. First off, Madam Vargas, welcome aboard. You're going to get more than you bargained for, I promise.
I'm sure. I'm looking forward to it.
And the staff is at your disposal if you have any questions.
Thank you.
So where do I start? I'll start with the low-hanging fruit. I know we promised you some revised contract with BDI, and we're working on that. Things got really slowed down with their attorneys on reviewing that contract, and we're going to get that re-energized and get on that and get it back to you all for your review soon, I hope. First off, I want to thank Rick Hayes and the entire police department, specifically our folks that came out, our 10 police officers led by Sergeant Brumley, who covered Saturday night. That was like a triple witching hour for us. We had a doubleheader over at the ballpark. We had graduation ceremony. We had a lot of rambunctious seniors, former seniors that had just had their diplomas, and parties all over town. We had the cruise night, and we had these Black Lives Matter individuals walking through town shouting their slogans. So at the end of the day, we had no felonies. We had no felonies over the weekend. We had no felonies all week. And that really does demonstrate some of the restraint that a lot of the folks in Selah had. And I want to thank the people in Selah for demonstrating that. Just to get to, I know Cliff talked about the protest. I was there along with Chris, Lance, and we got to see some of this as it went on. Thankful that there wasn't any actual confrontation. Was interested to see that there were 2 council members from Yakima who were supportive of the protest in our city. And I certainly question the appropriateness of another elected member from a sister city rolling in here in support of a protest. I can't imagine one of these sitting members going to a protest in Yakima. Maybe so, I don't know. But it was interesting to say the least. The Civic Center, no damage, no issues. We did shut down the power for the outdoor hookups because they were being misused and used to allow for boom boxes and loudspeakers for the demonstrators that were exercising their right to free speech. And actually, what it did turn into is disturbing the peace, because obviously those noises could be heard from much further than 100 feet. We purposely were not very forceful, or we were very permissive Saturday night. We allowed everything to go on that they wanted to do without intervention, although there were times we could have and maybe should have. But in an attempt to keep everything de-escalated, we did what we did. And the end state was, as you saw, no arrests necessary and no significant confrontations. I want to thank Jeff Peters and the entire Planning Commission for all the hard work they did. This is an ongoing work which you will now start getting involved in with regard to these fee schedules, and I hope we can come up to a really fair solution for both our developers and the residents in the city. The COVID-19 situation. Maybe many of you may have heard us, both Kevin Wickenhagen and I, talking earlier. We have a weekly meeting, a phone meeting with the YVCOG and other representatives throughout the city and the county. Our county commissioners are involved. Sometimes the senator's office gets involved, Senator Murray specifically, and we talk through the current issues that all the municipalities and the county are dealing with, along with the health district. They have about a 50% show percentage on that phone call, and we kick around a lot of issues. But one thing there's a few things I'd like to leave with you. The infection rates, and I don't want to plant our flag on this hill too strongly, because it's the numbers are so poorly supported. But we have the city of Selah has the lowest infection rate of any of the municipalities within the county of Yakima. We are at, I believe, 1.3%, if I recall. And that's of those, compared to the known population in Selah, which is approximately 7,965 people. I think we're much closer to 10,000. That's based on the last census. So we're probably even better than that. But that's of those people that were tested. And one thing we keep getting after the YVCOG in the health district on, and they just can't answer this question, is what's the actual denominator? And they can't actually offer an answer to that. The answer to that is unknowable, because this disease is infecting people and they don't know it, or they've had it and they've thrown it, and the antibody testing is not widespread. Right now, what we have going on is antigen testing, okay? And that tests whether you actually have an active disease. And that tells the doctors exactly that you have the disease, not that you had it and threw it. So the numbers that they're using to determine socioeconomic activity in the valley are based on who presented as sick. And then they start, and here's where Sherry and I and some other folks in the valley are having problems with the health district. They're using those numbers that they have based on very limited information to determine how many ventilators they need, what their death rate is, which is entirely incorrect, and then making decisions on the economic and social activity within the valley based on those very poor understanding of the denominator. Who actually had it? How dangerous is this disease? They really don't know. Admittedly, they don't know. They said, we had the doctor, I can't remember her name, Teresa something or other. She said it could be 5 to 10 times as much as they already know, maybe even more. So these decisions that are being made by the health department that affect our daily lives, that are not run by or even allowed to be reviewed by our county commissioners, by our municipal leaders, by our elected representatives in this county. They go straight from the Department of Health up to the governor's office, and that's it. We have no say. And in my opinion, that's a big problem. And it's damaging the lives of many people. It's being used to determine our fate. And I just want to make sure that the council members know our perspective here as we're watching this unfold. And we are truly spectators here, ladies and gentlemen. We are not part of the process, and we're not consulting with them. They're not asking us any questions. They're simply telling us what to do. We're falling in line, or we're supposed to be. But unless anybody has any questions for me, Madam Mayor, that's all I got. That's enough.
Well, I don't see any hands flying in the air. In a city our size, there's so many opinions out there about the COVID pandemic. These are new grounds for all of us that they change every day. The rule yesterday was phase 1. Today it's phase 1.5. Where did phase 1.5 come from? It was supposed to go phase 1 to phase 2. There's no right or wrong opinion out there. We all have our opinions, but my goal is to get our businesses opened up in Selah. So regardless of personal opinions, we really need to wear the mask, because we have businesses that are closed, and those businesses feel that if the other businesses don't wear masks, that we are the problem. And whether that is right or wrong, it is the perception that is out there. So if anybody's out there, they have a business, they're not wearing masks, please tell your employees to put them on. And with that said, I will say that I just got a text, and my employees at Kings Row are not wearing their mask tonight. So they will be told to get the mask back on. So that's all I have, other than Suzanne, welcome. I think that you're going to be a great voice on the council.
Thank you.
I enjoy the next few years with you.
I do as well. Thank you.
With that, if we have a hand up.
Madam Mayor, I'd not like to make a motion. I would give that honor to our newest council member.
Okay.
To make the motion to adjourn.
Okay. We have a hand up, Suzanne. Hang on just a second. Kevin?
I just wanted to take this time to encourage. We see a lot of stuff that we don't like going on in the government right now, or at least a lot of us don't like. And I would encourage all of us and our citizens to contact our legislators and request the changes at this time. If you don't like it, that's our out. That's our thing to do. So I have done that. I've contacted all 3 of our representatives, and voiced my concern about emergency orders by the governor being able to last this long. So I would just encourage each of you to do that if you aren't seeing how things are going.
All right, thanks, Kevin. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion to adjourn by Suzanne and a second by Russ. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are now adjourned. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.